Okay. My name is Pete Kearns, Petekerns. I'm the Eugene Police Chief. As you know, we responded to the fire at Civic Stadium that occurred Monday afternoon and evening. And as the fire department fought the fire, we assigned arson investigators to the scene to help determine what caused the fire. Several witnesses said that they'd seen young people in or around the press box, and it turns out there were actually 5 young people that Detective Williams will talk about here in a minute. One of them told his parents that he'd been there, and that's what led investigators to learn more about what caused the fire. Now we're at a point where 4 young men or 4 boys will be charged with the offenses related to causing the fire at Civic Stadium, and their introduction to the juvenile justice system is designed to ensure that they have the greatest opportunity at a productive and constructive life ahead. And so we hope and wish that that's exactly what happens for them. And this is an opportunity for the community now to develop a new mission a new vision for the Civic Stadium site. So who we have here is Detective Steve Williams, who's the lead arson investigator, and then also Fire Chief Randy Groves, if you have questions about the fire site.
Well, as Chief Kearns said, we did get some initial information from witnesses on scene, most of them from a baseball game at South Eugene High School, which is just across the street to the east, that they had seen some boys, middle school age boys, on bicycle in the area, leaving the area, and that prior to the fire, some boys have been seen up in the press box area. If you know the layout of Civic Stadium, it's in the behind the home plate up at the top of the stands. And that's roughly where the initial calls of fire came from there, and it spread rapidly through the rest of the building. As we worked the scene, yesterday morning we got a tip from a community. As I said, it was someone who had been with these boys just prior to the fire, and identified 4 boys ages 10 to 12, and we located them, interviewed some of them, and got pretty much the same information, that it was a fire that was started with materials in the press box, and that it quickly got out of hand and started to consume that part of the structure, and they left and got out on their bicycles. At that point, the fire then rapidly spread through the rest of the structure and pretty much destroyed it.
Materials in the press box that they were messing with?
Yes, there's wood and drywall, and there were debris from leaves and other things up there just from years of it being vacant.
Did they set it on fire with a lighter or something?
Yes.
Were they trying to cause a fire, or were they just playing with the fire?
That's not clear at this point. I don't believe 10 and 12-year-old boys were thinking that they were going to burn down the entire building. I think that what they were doing was obviously lighting a small fire, and it got out of control. They did say they were trying to put it out, but at that point it had spread too far. There wasn't much they could do, and it started to burn up the wall, and smoke and flames rolling out of the building. They got out. Fortunately, they got out of there, but they did get to their bikes and then take off.
And the parents of one of these kids is where this tip came from. One of the kids went home, said to his mom or dad, "Hey, I was at the scene of this thing."
They'd known about it, and not to give too many details about those folks, but they came forward, and we sat down and talked, and the information was provided was matched what we had from the scene, and it did. When we got to the other boys, they gave pretty much the same account.
Detective, that area is surrounded by a fence. Did they go over the fence or through an open gate? How did they actually get in there?
Just over the fence. It's a fairly short chain link fence. It's not hard to hop over.
So did somebody see them, because they were seen in the box, then they were seen on their bikes in the parking lot, so they saw them scale the fence to get out?
Not that I know of. We didn't have any witness statements to that effect that seen them actually go on the property. If anybody knows how large that property is, and we have had some issues with trespassing with some people camping on the property, and it's marked no trespassing around the entire border, but it's a large fenced area.
Could you give the ages of the kids? You're saying between 10 and 12, are they?
Well, 1 10-year-old and 3 12-year-olds.
What will these kids be charged with?
The initial charge we're looking at now is second-degree arson, based on the nature of the structure and what happened. And for juveniles, of course, the system's different than adults. It's not the same type of outcome. The juvenile services do have programs for kids of this age that have some issues, possibly with fire, if that turns out to be the issue, and they'll get some kind of treatment supervision that will address those issues.
Is it your understanding that these kids are just regular kids that were screwing around like every other kid does, and some accident happened that got terribly out of control? Or would you characterize these kids as maybe needing to be in the system a little bit, or what?
Well, that's a question. I mean, obviously, they need to be in the system because of this incident. Whether or not it's a problem that stems beyond this particular incident, I don't know yet. We're still looking into that because obviously in a town this size, we do get periodic fires of undetermined cause, so we will investigate some of those to see if they're related, but at this point we don't know.
They don't have any prior history or any
No,
history?
nothing at all.
Oftentimes when we cover stories like this, there's sort of one instigator and the other kids are there, but they don't stop him, and so everybody gets charged. Is that close to what's happened here?
My understanding was that the boys were all participants in this case. So
Why did they want to light a fire in there? I mean, it's a hot summer day. I mean, you're not doing it to get warm. What was the reason for even doing it?
that's a good question. I mean, I haven't been 10 or 12 for a long time, so I don't remember ever having those ideas myself. But kids are curious about things. They're not at that age. They're probably not thinking of the consequences. I don't see a 10 or 12-year-old sitting in Civic Stadium thinking, I'm going to light this entire place on fire. It's just not something that probably crossed their mind, and it just quickly, like I say, got out of hand, and they didn't know what to do, so they left.
Are their parents cooperating?
Yes, they have been. They've been very, very good with us.
And did you say that one of the parents was the person that came forward?
Of a boy who was not a participant in the fire itself.
What was the state of the kids when you interviewed them? I would imagine they'd be terrified.
They were obviously nervous and afraid, and I think probably more afraid of their parents than they were of me, because they're going to have consequences beyond just what happens on our side. So they're going to have to deal with their parents when this all comes down.
And then will the parents have to help pay for the stadium?
That I don't know. That's outside my area.
Kids being held, or are they on their?
Currently, 2 of the boys are lodged in the Serbu juvenile facility, and I don't have any information on the other 2 at this point.
Why would the other 2 not be being held as well?
That's beyond my job in terms of making the decision on who goes where. So
Will the district what 2 are being held?
those are the ones that we contacted last night, and the decision was made, and I was given instructions to get those 2 boys lodged, and then we were going to deal with the rest later, and that's probably still ongoing.
So what could be the consequences in terms of what they have, how they are treated for this, in this?
Well, that's
charged with arson?
that's something you probably would have to talk to juvenile services, because most of my clients and most of my cases are adults, and so through the circuit court and the municipal court, adults are handled differently. So and like I said, I don't usually deal with children all that much, and so we're going to see kind of where this goes.
Chief Kearns, when we were talking to you Tuesday, you were encouraging the kids to come forward and actually said you probably maybe won't be in trouble. Clearly that's not the case. Can you explain?
The boy that did come forward with his parents is not being charged, and there's no evidence that he committed an offense. So it turns out that's exactly what did happen. The person that came forward won't face any consequences because they weren't involved in any criminal acts.
Chief, could you clarify just how many? We got 5 kids here. Who's been charged? How many kids have been charged?
Sure, we have 4 boys who were actively involved in the fire. And the 5th boy was someone who had been present before and in that area with the boys, but he was not present at the time that the fire was set.
And he came forward. His parents came forward. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so the other 4 have been charged with that.
They will be. It's something that we don't charge anybody with anything. The district attorney does that.
They will be charged with second-degree arson.
I believe so at this point. That may change depending on what the attorneys do.
And when you say in the area, do you mean he was up in the press box as well?
He was with them, yes, just at that point, and then he left probably 15 to 20 minutes beforehand.
So they were up in the press box for a bit then?
That's correct.
You said that they used basically some things that were just there in the press box. I'm going to classify it as garbage that was in there.
Debris, yeah.
Did they use any propellants or anything, or did they spritz it with lighter fluid or anything else, or was it just used what they had and just set that on fire?
There was no evidence of any accelerants. Of course, looking at the structure, you see where the press box was and where it is now. It's pretty much in rubble at the base. But there was no evidence of accelerants, and the boys didn't mention anything other than just debris on hand and an open flame like a lighter.
Did they say why they did it?
Well, like I said, 10, 12-year-old boys, it's probably not rational thinking for the most part. The reasoning why, I don't know. Interest in fire, it's hard to say.
And the press box, was that sort of like a clubhouse that they would go to a lot, or was this their first time there?
That I don't know if they've been there before. It's such an open area, and there have been issues before with trespassers on the property. The Eugene Civic Alliance has told me they have found evidence before of people camping on the property, being up in the stands, leaving behind debris. So it's just because of the nature of the property, it's hard to keep people out.
Do you know if it was matches or a lighter?
It was a lighter.
You know why the fifth kid left?
As I understand, I think he was called home by a parent. So it's a fairly large neighborhood, but that's their territory. That's where they roam. So.
And Fire Chief, does this end the investigation?
The investigation is still ongoing as far as I know, but I'll defer to the detective.
We still have fire investigators on scene that are working in the debris. The issues we had with it is that part of the structure was still standing, but it was a hazard of collapse, and so we weren't able to send anybody in. And there was also the issue of asbestos in the construction materials. So the fire marshals are taking the lead on that with the other investigators, and they're currently working on the scene.
Chief, do you have any idea how much it's going to cost, since this is kind of your purview? Do you know how much it's going to cost to clean that up and get that area cleared? I mean, any guesstimates?
Not at this time, no. We're going to continue to assess that and work with the property owners and move forward from there.
Chief, on the asbestos issue in the ceiling, in the roofing tiles there, I heard some talk the other day of maybe having DEQ come in, do some air sampling in the area just to make sure everybody is cool and everything, the air quality is reasonable. Could you touch on that a
Sure.
little bit?
El Rapa is already involved in that. In fact, there's been requests if people find debris in their yards. There's a specific way of handling that. You know, wearing gloves, having a plastic baggie that you can secure, a Ziploc that you can secure the debris in. Spray it down with water first, which keeps airborne particulate from being an exposure issue, and then calling El Rapa, and they will come pick up the item and sample it.
Airborne particles, though, are primarily diminished or dispersed.
That's true. That's correct. And there has been air monitoring for that. And El Rapa did pick up increased particulate matter in the area, but it doesn't break it down by asbestos. But you get that with any structure fire, actually any wildland fire as well. You get increased particulate matter in the air.
You mentioned asbestos and risk of collapse. Are any of the surrounding civilians that live there evacuated, or are they still there?
I believe they're all back in their structures at this point.
Does anybody, Detective, do you know if any of these kids have been in the system before?
Not that I know of. I didn't see any evidence of that.
Do you know if they've tried to set fires before?
That's a good question. We were still looking at the possibility that they were involved in other fires we've had, but we don't know at this point if they were.
Are there other fires that are of mysterious nature that's happened in that, as you called it, their particular area?
We always have. There are a lot of fires in any community and of various natures. Sometimes we get dumpsters lit on fire. Sometimes we have house fires. Sometimes we get fires we go to that are undetermined cause. We don't know, or we're not. The evidence doesn't indicate one way or another. We have had various fires. Well, actually, throughout Eugene, using the summer season, we'll get a rash of them, either natural or human-caused fires, but tying them to these particular boys at this point, we don't have any evidence.
There was one 10-year-old and three 12-year-olds, you said?
That's correct.
Could we take one more run at the cause? Because you're sitting down with these kids, they're not hardened criminals. I would be surprised if you didn't say, okay, guys, what in the world were you thinking? Why'd you do this?
Yeah, I don't know if you ever talked to a 10 or 12-year-old boy recently, and you don't get a whole lot of rational information out of them, and that's kind of what it was. It's why did you do that? I don't know. They're messing around, and they're lighting some debris on fire, and just being kids. Not what kids should be doing, but some kids do.
Did you get a sense of remorse from them as you were talking with them?
A lot from the parents. The parents were very upset that these kids were involved in this, and that's why we had good luck with the parents. They were very cooperative with us. With the boys, I don't know if they really understood the full magnitude of what it was. I think they realized. I'm sure they knew what they did was not good, but I don't think they realized how bad it had gotten. I think they saw it. Obviously, they've been in that area. They've seen the damage that was caused, so they were aware of it. And obviously, one boy that was there who knew about what had happened afterwards felt bad enough to tell someone about it.
Did they stay and watch with everybody else?
That I don't know. It was such a large area, and there were probably thousands of people surrounding that area at any given time. They may have come back. I know they were in the area after that, but whether or not they really came back and watched, I don't know.
Were they the kids that were seen going over the footbridge carrying their bikes? Were they the same kids?
That I don't know. The witness statements we had were that there were several juveniles up in the stands up by the press box, and then we had several on bicycles leaving the area, and I believe that was probably them.
Chief, maybe you know this. Who or when would there be a decision to see if anyone will go after the parents for financial issues?
I don't have any information or knowledge on that.
What time was the arrest made last night?
Between 7 and 8 p.m.
And the boy's parent came to you guys yesterday morning?
Yes.
And then should we expect that the other two who are not in juvie might be in lodge?
That I don't know. We're still working on that part. I don't know if we're going to do that with the 10-year-old. I don't know if that's going to serve any purpose, but with the other one, it's still in process.
So when things got fired, did they mention the moments that things started to kind of, go up in flames? Did they try to, stomp anything out? Did it just grow out of proportion? They ran off?
Well, the impression I got from them was it was a moment of panic and trying to put it out, and then realizing that it had gone too far, and then just getting out of the press box and out of the stadium.
Did any of the kids get hurt in escaping this fire? Or they...
Not that I saw. I mean, there were no injuries. They didn't complain of anything. I think they got out fairly quickly.
Is just your understanding of these are juveniles and they go through the juvenile thing. When they turn like 21, how does that work? Do they do their thing in juvie and then they're done and they've done their deal? Or
That's more of a question for the question for someone at the courts of the DA's office. That's beyond the part that I have access to. I know in other cases that juveniles can have things expunged from their records. I don't know how this works in that one, but that's going to be a ways down the road.
Overall, you've got to feel pretty good that this got wrapped up quickly and someone from the community came forward.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Okay. The last thing I'd like to say is that a fire investigation of this magnitude takes a lot of work, and agencies work collaboratively together. And we had a lot of help from the Eugene Springfield Fire Marshal's Office and the Fire Department, and also Lane County Sheriff's Office Search and Rescue, the ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the Oregon State Police. And it's because of all their assistance that we were able to pull this together so quickly. All right. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Can I provide the spellings of the names